Hi Tubies, here's Alexandra and welcome to your next painting tutorial. In this video I will paint the Dwarf from Mantic's Dungeon Saga. Here you can see I have already straightened the hammer with my hairdryer. I've heated this part a little bit up and straightened it. After that I have primed it in black. So, the first thing we are going to do is apply a coat of lead belcher, just the dark tone metal color from GW, but if you don't use GW colors, just use the metal color of your choice. I apply a little bit on my palette, and of course 1 drop of water for a better flow. So, and then I simply start picking out all the metal parts, like here the shoulder pads, then of course the hammer, here his helmet, then his knee pads, there we have armor, and so on. So I think you get the point. I will finish all the metal paint job and be right back. Okie dokie. As you can see, all the metal paints are applied, and now we paint the skin. For that skin I use a base color because we are painting on black surface, and so I use here red skin flash, but you could also use from Privateer Press a heavy duty skin tone, or from Vallejo, what have you. Doesn't really matter. It's just there to cover the black quite nice. So you see, there is still a little cloudiness, but that's okay. We will paint over the rest later. And for those of you that are wondering what my fancy little miniature holder is, this is just a cup here from a spray bottle, and here I have some sticky tack on top, and then I press the miniature on. That's the whole secret. So, now for the face. It doesn't matter that we will paint here over the beard. We will repaint that later in a different color, but for now we will go slightly over it. So, just like that. And for those of you who are wondering, this is my brush, what I'm using, a size 3 Rotmarder Kolinsky. For GW terms, this would be considered a base coat brush, and for other brands, obviously different names. Well, I think you got the point. I will finish up this color and be right back. Okay, as you can see, all the skin color is applied, and now we will make finishing strikes on the core colors here. I will now mix up a reddish brown. So for that I use Evil Sun Scarlet and Mournfang Brown. Putting some on the palette. Oops, sorry. Mixing it all together. So, and that I will apply now here to his clothing. So also I will after that paint his boots in Mournfang Brown, as well as the handle of his hammer. And then I will make some corrections here and there. Like for example there, I've missed totally painting metal on this part. But other than that, that will cover the whole miniature with prime colors, and that's what we are aiming for in this step. So be right back, and I'll see you in a second. So tubies, all the core colors are now applied, as you can see, and at this stage make sure everything is dry. So leave them at least 20 minutes for drying. And now we will apply some Rygland Flesh shade to the skin and the beard. So just slop it on like that. Make sure there's enough of this stuff in the recesses that we have nice shadows. So don't be shy with this stuff. And try to avoid to hit the armor with the wash or the ink or the shade, however you want to call it. Different brands have different names for it, but it is just basically a very liquid, inkish color solution. So after that is applied, this needs to dry, and after that is dry, I will hit the armor parts with another shade or wash, Nuln Oil or black wash if you have a different manufacturer, but only apply it after the other wash is dried. Otherwise, if you just hit a tiny little bit of the other color with the other wash, then they will immediately start to mix together, and this is definitely not what we want. So we want to keep those areas separate. So put out your hair dryer, or put the miniature for a few minutes on a radiator, or leave it just simply to dry. Yeah, I'll be back when the black shade is also applied. And welcome back. After an extended period of drying time, we have now all the shadow areas nice defined, as you can see, and we will continue now with highlighting. And for that purpose we start again with the original skin tone, Red Skin Flesh. So just put some on your palette. Of course we will water it down with 1 drop of water. So I get often the question, how much water do I water down my paint? As a base starting point, I would say for each 1 stroke of paint you grab with your brush is 1 drop, or also 1 stroke of water drop from your brush into the paint is a good starting point. If this is too liquid for you, then you can also add another half pinch of paint to the color to thicken it down a little bit again. But like I said, this is a good starting point to measure your watery down paint. So what you can see here is I'm picking out the high spots of the skin and leaving obviously the shadow areas that we have established previously with the wash in the recesses. And we have here a little fly that wants to be desperately on camera. It's swirling around here, landing from time to time on my hand. So, as you can see, I'm very, very gently going here over the fingers so that the recesses are still in the dark. So for that purpose you don't have to have too much paint on your brush. You can adjust the amount of paint obviously on a little piece of paper on your painting desk. Many painters do that on their thumb or on their hand. I personally would never do that, paint myself with this acrylic paint. I think this is absolutely ridiculous, and you should avoid that and simply use paper for that. This is just an ugly and dirty habit, and you should not approach such a path. So, I guess for the first layer of the skin, that's okay. So now we will start to highlight the skin even more, and for that we'll use a brighter flesh tone. In this case I use a Cadia flesh tone, and mix it in with other color. And of course I will also add some water to it. So then obviously adjust the amount of paint on your brush until you are satisfied. So, and then again picking out the high spots and leaving a little bit of the old color behind, so you can have a nice graduate color transition between the colors. So I get often the question nowadays if I will make more tutorials about Lord of the Rings / The Hobbit miniatures, and I will say no. Reason for that is simply the price range of GW has reached a point for me where I will no longer purchase any miniatures of Games Workshop. Obviously, I will still continue painting Games Workshop miniatures, but, like I said, I will not purchase anymore. So, all the ongoing painting tutorials will always be miniatures I have already here at my home, but I will stop purchasing any Games Workshop miniatures because, let's face it, the price hype for Games Workshop has reached a point for me where it is not affordable anymore to buy miniatures from them. And so, like you have seen here, I start now painting Mantic miniatures from Dungeon Saga, and maybe other miniatures, like for example here Beyond the Gates of Antares, that Warlord Games sent me. Those are more appealing miniatures for me. They have the purpose for my painting tutorials, like the GW miniatures, for half the price. So, continuing now, I use now pure Cadia flesh tone. for the next highlight. And you see the highlight steps will get smaller and smaller. I'm barely touching the surface, but you can still see the progress in the highlighting. And this fly is really annoying. But what can I do? I don't want to smash the fly. So, and now I will add a little bit of white into the skin tone for the final highlight. Give it a good shake. There we go. Yeah, that looks good. And with that, just some tiny streaks. Sometimes a little color blob is adding up at the tip of your brush. Just gently remove it and then go on with the painting. So, then here. And there voila. The skin looks good. Okay, now we will paint the eyes, and for that I need a really good and fine brush. I use now a 0.0 for that, 0.0 Kolinsky, and I will use this color for it, Screaming Skull, or the old bleach bone, or other beige color that you have lying around. So, make your hand really steady, hand on the ground, then press your hand against the miniature holder, and then you have a really nice steady hand to paint the eye. Just like that. Same on the other side. There you go. Okay. Oops. There hit my brush, the lamp, over my painting area. So now I use black for the eyes itself. And there again, I hope you can see that there's a little color knot there directly on the tip. I want to remove that. So, so a tiny bit of black, and then very gently aim for the middle of the eye. Boop. Just like that. Same on the other side. And there we go. He has eyes now. Really nice. So, in the next step, we will paint the beard. Be right back. Okie dokie. There I'm back, and now we will paint the beard. For that, I will use now a mix out of Burnt Cat Ready from Vallejo Model Color. Don't worry, I have changed the pot for that on my own, because I don't like the dropper bottles. But don't worry. So burn cat ready, and I will add a tiny bit of Rhinox hide. To make a nice dark brown, reddish dark brown. There I have it. Also a little bit of water for a better flow. So, and then we simply start applying that. And since we have previously painted the beard in the skin tone, this beard color should apply really smooth and without any problems. So always keep in mind that you can rotate the miniature that you're painting. So instead of trying to hit with the brush in a different angle, you should always keep your brush angle at a relatively steady position, and instead rotate the miniature. This is much more efficient and better for the muscle memory of your fingers. So there we go. That should do it. Ah, there is still something left. That we will quickly paint. Just like that. So, and now we are going to highlight this. And we will add a little bit of XV88 to the mix. But you could also use a different brown tone or yellow tone or a beige tone, whatever you prefer to highlight with. So we want a relatively dry brush. We are not exactly dry brushing, we're just slightly over brushing now, trying to hit the upper parts of the beard. Like that. So there, another stroke. There we go. So now we will add another drop to the paint. There you go. And we will highlight even more. Try to leave a little bit of the other color behind, just like usual. So, and now I will add a little bit of Vallejo Model Color Stone Gray. To make some nice highlight strokes. Just here and there. Just pick up one or two strains and highlight them. not every single one. So, and there we go. There we have a nice brown beard with some nice highlights in it. There we go. In the next step, we will highlight the clothes. Be right back. So, Tubies, it's time for the clothes now. And we will use Scrag Brown and Corn Red for that. Just a 50-50 mix. Sorry for that, I hit the camera accidentally. Not 50-50, it needs to be a little bit more of the brown. There we go, that looks better. Okay, and with that we will simply hit every little square of this clothes. Gently, barely touching. Also here, you can nicely see the areas where the light hit. And we want to have the folds nice and dark. Again on the other side. Dum-de-dum-de-dum. So that's it for layer 1. Now we will highlight even more with Scrag Brown. So now we will only hit the top parts of the squares. I need a little bit of water into the color, it's too dry. So, same on the other side. Ta-da! So now we will highlight even more with a little bit XV88. And hit with it even higher spots. Yeah, that looks nice. Okay. And that finishes up the highlight for the clothes. The clothing, the fabric. Yeah, looks nice. So now for the finishing touches, we will add a little bit of highlight to the metal. So let's get rid of the brown tones and get the metal tones. Here, good old chainmail and room-fang steel. Give the colors a good shake. So we start with Black Belcher, like we had before, and we will start to bring out the highlights, the high areas of the metal. Not everything. We have nice dark tones and we want to keep them. So just pick out some nice high spots and then we will paint them. There. Then here the middle line through the armor plates. Here the top part, front of the shoes. And here obviously at the armor, the parts where I've accidentally hit the armor with some skin tone. Now you can correct it at this stage. So, nice. So, and this high spots we will now increase in the intensity with either Runefang steel or chainmail, whatever you have. I prefer the old chainmail. If you don't have that, pick your Runefang steel, or the old mithril silver is also a nice touch. This brings out nicely the high areas. Just here and there. We don't have to paint the whole miniature, just some strokes with a bright metal color. So, just like that, and voila, the metal is also done. So, last thing to do is to paint the base, and for that we remove all the cat hairs that have been stuck to the miniature holder. And press the sticky tack down so we can reach all the edges nicely. Okay, there we go. And the color of choice for that will be obviously a gray. We start with Ishing Gray. And for that I will use a different brush. Nice old damaged brush, so we won't damage our nice painting brushes. So, obviously, if you have primed a miniature in a different color for such a base, prime it in black previously, but we have that already, so we can skip that part. So we will add a little bit of gray to our palette, and then we will remove most of the excess paint, and then we will gently wet brushing the base with this gray. and try to avoid hitting the corners between the stones. Okay, layer 1 is down. Now we will highlight with some Vallejo model color stone gray. There you can see it. Also remove most of the excess paint, now even more, and gently going over it and dry brushing the surface. And as you can see, with the different paint strokes, brush strokes I'm doing in different directions, we get a nice grain here on the relatively flat stones. Okay, and now we will use pure stone gray, and again removing most of the excess paint and again hitting the stones, this time in more of a dabbing motion, like that. Oops. I have accidentally hit the boots. Let's remove that real quickly. And there we go. This accident never happened. So, there you have it. The base is done. So now it's up to the edge of the base. We'll paint it in black. Just nicely go over it. Try to avoid hitting the top part. Just like here. If you do it, just wipe it with your finger. And we're done. The miniature is done. It's painted, completely painted and gaming ready. Yay! We have did it. We have done it. Yay! But we are not finished yet. Because this is a gaming miniature that gets a lot of attention with your fingers in a game like Dungeon Saga, so it will need protection. And for that we use a varnish. I use in this case here Vallejo Model Color Matte Varnish. But you could also use a spray varnish if you have it. And then you try to find a nice clean spot on your palette. Just like there. So, and then obviously you need a clean brush for that. A dry, clean brush. And what I'm going to do now will look messy at the beginning, but trust me, this stuff will dry up totally clear and you won't see anything of it. But this will give your miniature a really, really nice protective coat. So, just like that, nicely rubbing it in. can also hit the base with that. And like I said, you see the paint starts to dry out clear already. Try to avoid hitting, well, try to hit every bubble that you can get rid of. And then the miniature is done. Just like that. So, give your brush a good wash. Obviously, you don't want the clear coat or the varnish to dry on your brush. This will totally destroy your brush. So I will hit the miniature really quickly with my hair dryer and be right back in a second to show you the end result. So Chewies, there you have him in his full glory. The varnish is dried and he is ready to be played. I hope you liked this tutorial and we see us in the next one. Your Alexandra.